Hey guys, and welcome back to an episode of Rentalpreneur Journeys. I'm your host, Phil Kinnard from Futurestay, and today we have the one, the only, the most hospitable host in the world, Mrs. Jodie Olin. Jodie, thank you so much for joining us today on Rentalpreneur Journeys to tell your story. Before we get started, guys, I got to tell you, and I'm gonna try not to gush too much, but Jodie, I'm super excited about today because Jodie has helped hundreds, really, I think at this point in time, of rentalpreneurs,
126.
126 host and rentalpreneurs around the world tell their stories, their rentalpreneur journeys of how they got started, why they do what they do, why it's important for them, for their families, for their communities. And in doing so, she's not only changed the trajectory, I'm going to go ahead and say that, of the industry, but she's also helped a lot of people and motivate really probably thousands, tens of thousands, and maybe, let's get to millions, right? Let's do this
Yep.
more. And I'm excited because I get to sit with you guys and tell her story. I don't know her story yet. I'm going to learn it too at the same time. She's going to tell her story. Jodie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Philip.
The goal of today's mini cast is I want to share Jodie's story because Jodie has just been nominated, or not just nominated, shortlisted for the Rentalpreneur of the Year Shorties Award. Near and dear to my heart. At Futurestay, we're the sponsor of the Rentalpreneur Shorties. We actually partnered with them to come up with the idea. And the reason why is because rentalpreneurs are really the backbone of the short-term rental industry. Rentalpreneurs like Jodie, myself, and probably you who are listening make up about 99% of all short-term rental properties, kind of managers that have less than 20 properties.
Mhm.
And the reality is we don't get enough recognition. And so we wanted to help rentalpreneurs, people that started small like Jodie and others, tell their story so that when you're listening, you can understand what your trajectory can be like and what you can achieve as a rentalpreneur. Jodie, let me start by asking you how you got started and how'd you get into the short-term rental industry?
Well, it was just by accident, really. To be totally honest, it was just by accident. My family and I have been traveling around Europe. You could probably tell that from my accent, I'm Australian. And we decided to settle in the UK. I had at that time some teenage children that needed to finish off their schooling because we were traveling the world and just, enjoying ourselves all together as a family. So we turned up at the UK. In the UK, we rented a house, and on the same property there was a little cottage, and we just thought, what are we going to do with that? Now, I do have a background in hospitality. I used to work in five-star hotels. I went to hospitality school back in the day, a long, long, long time ago. And I worked for some of the big chain hotels, which gave me my education in hospitality skills. So I've done everything from front of house to chefing to housekeeping, the whole works. I've looked after resorts and tiny little boutique hotels. So when we arrived in the UK, we had this cottage and we were wondering what we should do with it. And do we just store our bikes in there, or we just thought, let's give this Airbnb thing a go. Like, we had been traveling for 2 years nonstop, staying at all sorts of properties, including short-term rentals. And we decided to give it a go. I made a listing and it was a hit. We live in a beautiful village in the UK in an area called the Cotswolds, where actually our king lives, King Charles. And it was just an instant hit. And that's how I started, just by accident.
Wow. Okay. I need to dig into this. This is an excellent story. One thing that a common thread that I see when I speak with other rentalpreneurs, and similar to myself, is that this was not a grand plan. You did not go out and chart out a career path and say, how do I become a rentalpreneur, right? How do I find a property that I can list on X and Y and Z channel and grow that? I think so many rentalpreneurs start because either they have an opportunity or they have a need, right? They start, life kind of presents either a challenge or an opportunity, and you figure out how to turn that into something, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
tell me about, and I have so many more questions about your story here, but did you say you were renting the cabin?
Yes.
Or sorry, not the cabin, the
The
house.
house. Yeah, so we rented a house, and on the same property was this little cottage as well. So, who was going to
So
stay
a
there?
lot of people think that your first property has to be a $1 million mansion that you go out and you plop down 20% deposit for
Mm.
and take on a huge $6,000 a month mortgage payment. No, you found a property that had really essentially what would be an ADU, just an auxiliary dwelling unit. You got that, you gussied that up, cleaned the cobwebs out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We polished it up, we furnished it. It looked really great. And to be honest, by the end when we started getting bookings in, we were making so much money. It paid for our entire rent for the cottage and the house and more.
You love to see it. That's exactly what it's
It
all
was,
about, right?
yeah, it was fantastic.
I was very similar. I had I bought too much apartment.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah,
well, it was in New York, so it wasn't too much by size. It was very small, but it was too
right.
much by amount that I could pay, right?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, it was my second home, and I decided, all right, this is just going to become a instead of this being my weekend home, it's going to be my
Hmm.
Wednesday, Thursday home, and I'm going to rent it out on the weekends so I can actually pay for what it cost me, and it ended up being more than the mortgage covered. So
Yeah.
that story, I think, is probably resonates with not just current rentalpreneurs who got into the business, but anyone who's looking at the property that they either own or rent and are thinking, how do I get into this? Right?
Yeah.
You may already be there. You may not have to buy something to get started, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, people rent out their spare rooms, don't they? Or their garage. Actually, I saw once somebody set up a tent inside their living room and they were renting that out on Airbnb. I personally wouldn't do that, but they
A
did.
little bit. Yeah, that's a lot, right? That's going all the way there. Hey, look, it depends on what you're into. So,
Yeah.
so
No,
Jody,
I'm right with you, Philip. You don't need to have a big luxury property. There's a market there for everybody. And if you create the listing, which, represents what you have, and you sell what you have,
mm,
it's different if you've got this mediocre property and you're trying to sell it as a luxury property. But if you're selling it as what it is, so you're very transparent and you bring the guest in right from the booking stage through the whole channel of their experience to checkout. If you've set up the expectations correctly, you can be successful in this.
I
Doesn't
love
matter
that,
what
and I
you
want to dig back into that in a second. But
do.
before we do,
Mm,
I want to talk. I want to make sure you have an opportunity to highlight what you've done beyond
mm.
starting that first rental, right? What did you go on to do? I don't want to say next, but after you gain more experience, how did you go from that to the Jody that I know from
To the
Hospitable
Jodie
Host?
that I know, that you know. Okay, so we met last year actually at a party after the Shorties, which was great. And the Jodie that you met then had just released a book. I had, and since then we now have three books
Yes. Yes.
with 126 authors, and they're all hosts in the industry, just sharing their experience and their story about how they got to be in the industry. So just as you've asked me, my history, I started having conversations with people online through COVID, and I didn't even know this world existed pre-COVID. I was just doing my thing. I was a host of one property. And then during COVID, I started poking around the internet because we all had a bit of time, right? So I started seeing that there was this whole industry out there. There was people like me.
Mm.
And I wanted to get to know who they were. And I listened to them on a platform called Clubhouse. I don't know if you know that platform. Most people do. And I found it super interesting. And I wanted to reach out to some of these people, but I wasn't a coach. I didn't have an additional thing besides being a host. So I came up with the concept of bringing in some people into a book and to share their stories to motivate others. And I just started talking to people. It was very organic. And a lot of people just thought, wow, that's a great idea. Love to share my story. They not only share their story of how they got into the industry, but they share those funny, gross stories about our guests, or a guest that has helped them pivot in their business. And also they give tips to new hosts or current hosts, or just what they do that they feel that makes them a hospitable host.
That's such a beautiful story. And, the reason why that's so touching to me is because when I think about, my journey as an entrepreneur, as a tech entrepreneur, the hardest part is not getting started. It's what happens next. It's knowing what to do right after you start. Because there's so many bad ways to start as a business owner, right? There's so many ways to do it wrong. And looking for mentorship, looking for guidance and inspiration is really what gives you the fuel that you need to get to that next step as any kind of entrepreneur, especially as a rentalpreneur. What you've done with Hospitable Host has literally, it's inspired countless people to take the risk, to keep pushing after they've maybe purchased their first home or started cleaning out and renting their garage to go further. And, to me, that's what being a rentalpreneur really is all about. It's not just about making that first set of gains, but it's about keep pushing and reaching back and helping others up. So I really love to see that.
Yeah, totally. And if you do read these people's stories, like every single one of them, I met either online or in person. We had a conversation. I was really particular of who came into the book. It's the last book, the third book, there's 40 authors in there. I had 126 people just on the back of them reading the second book who wanted to come in and share their stories. So I have spoken to so many people and really made sure that we've got the best of the best in there. They share my vision of hospitality. And some of these people have had to really pivot in their life in some way. A partner has passed away. They've ended up with a property. They've come through the property market. They have no idea about hospitality. The stories are quite incredible. This first book is on the table of the Zambian president. Like, he signed it. It's been all around the world because the hosts are from all around the world. Everyone came together, shared their story. And look, if I had known it had got to this, 2.5 years ago when this idea popped into my head, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought it had come to this of what it is now. And to me, it just shows you, if you come up with an idea, just persevere, run with it. You've got to take action. If you don't take action, nothing's going to happen, right? So, and as a rentalpreneur, the people in these books are the best in the industry. They really are. And I know there's many, many out there that aren't in the book. And maybe there'll be a fourth book, who knows. We do have a Spanish version coming out, and we have some regional books coming out, a Japanese version. Wow. We have an all women's version coming out. So wow, people do want to share their stories, which was really cool. And for me to give these people a platform to share their story, to get visible not just within the industry, but within their local communities. Being a number one best-selling author, which all the books have become number one bestsellers on Amazon, that gives you credibility. You're seen as a person of maybe influence or credibility. It's the best business card that you can have tucked under your arm when you go to a conference. Have you seen this book? I'm in this book. And for your guests, like all my properties have this book in it, which the first book I'm in. And, guests love reading my story. We don't meet them personally, very few times now. And they'll read it, and sometimes they'll see me in the corridor of one of my apartment blocks. I'm like, "You're Jodie."
So let me ask you a question about that, because you said something earlier, and you just touched back on it then, which is really about the story, not the stories of ourselves as hosts, right, or rentalpreneurs, but each stay that you give a guest is a story for them. At Futurestay, we call that the stay story, right? In marketing and in tech entrepreneurship, we look at that as kind of a customer life cycle stage journey, right? You discover someone, they go into a conversion funnel, you sell to them, you deliver them the product, hopefully they convert, they then become an evangelist later on, right? It's a
Yeah.
customer experience map. But as a host, as a rentalpreneur, you said earlier, you have to sell what you have, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. When you think about your ideal guest and the story that you tell yourself about how they are going to experience your property, everything from how they discover you and your property to how they arrive there to what they do when they're there, what do they eat, what are they there to, are they there with their family, right? What do they do while they're there? Why do they travel? And then how do they leave? Like that to me is a stay story, and crafting a good one of those helps you really understand how to stand out in your market, right? Because you're designing for a specific person. What is your stay story for your ideal guest? I know it may differ on each property, but pick one and tell me kind of how you thought about that process.
Yeah. Well, it took me a while to learn this actually, because coming from big 5-star corporate, properties, you get everyone coming in. But where I'm located, you've really got to, for me, I felt I really got to know my area. I've got to see what's going on in my area to understand why people would actually come here. Now, as I said in the before previously, I am in a village that King Charles lives in. Why do you think people come here? I'm in this quintessential little cute village with stone cottages, which go back 500 years old. One of my cottages is 500 years old. Wow. You, Philip, would not be able to stand up in it. You have to duck your head to get in. And so for me, it's mainly couples coming into, for a romantic weekend. We have 3 big wedding venues in the area, so we have a lot of guests coming who are attending weddings. We have people coming for baby moons and honeymoons, and the whole lot really. We don't really cater for families. I do have travel cots and high chairs, but I feel that this isn't an area that families would come to. If they do, they want to stay in a much larger property than what I have. And yeah, it's just nurturing their expectations. So every Monday, I have a VA who will call every guest coming in that week. Hi, we're here to support you. We're going to look after you when you come this week. Why are you coming? We get some information then. So if they're coming for a birthday, we can set it up, the property up for just a birthday. If they're coming for a wedding, we can make sure that, there's extra things in there like, we actually put some headache tablets in there, with a little note. Hope you enjoy the wedding. This might help for the day after. Just little things like that. So,
and it really, I think that's great because, to the point you made earlier about the tent in the living room, not maybe that's all you have access to.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's totally fine as long as you understand exactly what someone is going to need if they have that tent. If they're staying in a tent in the living room, like what are they expecting?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you communicate that clearly. Mm-hmm. But then you can help if you put yourself in the guest's shoes. Your accommodation can be the right accommodation for someone, right? It's not about always, when you're thinking about short-term rentals, everything actually has a competitive set, right?
Sure.
If you're a tent in the living room, you're not competing with the beautiful getaway, low ceiling, 500-year-old stone cottage, right? Which is going to be a kind of once in a lifetime romantic retreat, right? Sure. Totally different comp sets, and that's okay. A lot of people think, well, if I want to make my short-term rental more attractive, I have to put a hot tub in it. Well, hold on a second. If your families, if the people that are coming are families with small children and toddlers, they probably don't have time to get in the hot tub.
No,
right?
Exactly.
Maybe a pack and play and a sanitizing cart is gonna be the thing that puts them over the edge.
Yes.
And makes your property unique, right?
Yeah. Like I actually manage a couple of properties that I personally don't like. I walk in there and think, oh, but they're fully booked. I present it. The photos tell the story. They like the service. They like the experience when they come. So it's still not my personal taste, but people like it. So that's all that matters. You just got to set the expectation, I think.
That's 100% right. So you're talking, your journey has gone from you opportunistically seeing a a little shed essentially that you turned into your first rental, right, in a
Mm-hmm.
property that you were renting yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to being able to help other people tell the stories of their rentalpreneur journey through the Hospitable Hosts series of books that's really
Yes.
gone worldwide, to you now becoming, also a property manager, having more properties under management,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you make the decision in terms of when you're ready to take more work on and and when you want to slow things down so you have more flexibility? How do what does work-life balance mean for you?
Mm. I had to learn that. Yeah, I had to learn that. So my first team was actually my family, my children, were all, teenagers, and we decided to set up a travel fund because we like traveling. And so they were the ones that came in with me. We cleaned it first. Then and it was great. We did it as a family. They learnt the skills of setting up a business and what it actually means. They also, as teenage boys, learned how to tidy up after themselves and clean a bathroom, which was great. My son used to say that all the 5-star reviews came through because of his cleaning skills. So
Love that.
yeah, so that was good. So they gained life skills from that, but they also met people from around the world as well because the property was right next door to our house. But from then, I started to what you call in the States rental arbitrage. In the UK we call it rent to rent. I rented properties. I pitched to landlords. I found properties that were already on Airbnb and other OTA platforms and reached out to their owners. And I just kept picking up properties. And then people would see me, walking around with a basket of linen, and I was doing this all on my own with my family. And then it was we needed to have some time off, so I built a team. I built a very, very good team, and that my team now has allowed me to live on the other side of the world because I relocated back to Australia recently, and my team had just picked up, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do without my team. So I nurture my team. Mm.
That makes a ton of sense. And
Yeah.
so, you've been able to kind of craft a life for yourself through a
Mm-hmm.
significant amount of hard work and discipline, right? But a life for
Lots of
yourself
hard
where
work.
you get to prioritize yourself with your time and your time with your family. And I think for many rentalpreneurs, I think the ultimate goal is really that flexibility,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't mean that once you get to that level where you've built flexibility that you stop. That's up to you, but it gives you the optionality to decide what you want to do next,
Oh,
right?
sure. And at the end of the day, it's your business, so you still have to have your hand in it. Like I've come back to the UK because I'm going to be attending the Shorties, and I'm here staying in one of my properties, and I've been cleaning with one of my cleaners this morning, and like I still get right in there and help and make beds, and I'm under the floor, rewiring things and doing DIY and all of those things. You can't step away from it. At 15 properties that I have now, I'm able to still stay in that. And I do enjoy that part of it. I don't want to be a big player, where I just sit behind a desk and, have the team. I have a really great cleaning team and an operations team, have a virtual assistant, and that's enough for me. And 15 properties is enough for me. Um, because now doing the books, I'm also a publisher. So I used a publisher for the first book in the US to help me publish Hospitable Host Volume 1. But then I thought, using what I learned from her, I could do things a little bit differently. So I started my own publishing house to publish Volume 2 and 3. And I published Mark Simpson's latest book, Book Direct Blueprint, this one. And I'm publishing Dave Goodfellow's book next week. He's in the UK, and various other people in the short-term rental world. So I am pretty busy with that as well. So I don't want any more properties. I love Tetbury where I am, and that's enough for me. And I think that's, as a rental entrepreneur, you need to know your boundaries as well.
Mm.
I get contacted all the time Jodie, can you look after my property? Oh no, sorry. And now I have standards. Before I used to take everything that was thrown my way, and then now I look at the property and it's like, does this align with my brand? Like, is this somebody I want to work with? Like the owner, you have to work well with the owner. You have to have a really good relationship with the owner. If you don't, then hell can break loose. And I've recently let two go because they just micromanage everything that I do or my cleaners do, and they're watching all the comms, and he ducks in every now and then, and I'm like, I've already covered it, and it doesn't work with my brand. So I think, as an entrepreneur, you have to have boundaries. You have to understand your boundaries as well.
Yeah, and that's ultimately because you're using short-term rentals as a way to kind of craft the life that you want. Really, that's the ultimate
Sure.
goal of a rentalpreneur, right?
Absolutely. And in the last 2.5 years, Philip, I feel like my life has been in a complete vortex, and it's spinning and spinning and spinning. In the last 2.5 years, I've traveled the world. I've spoken at conferences. I've attended conferences. I've been to a retreat in Mexico for a 7-figure mastermind group. I was invited to Scotland this time last year to sit around the table with CEOs, and never in my life did I think that would be my path now. Hospitable Host has grown more than just the book. The book started this whole movement of professional hosts, like I said before, who all share my vision in creating great hospitality, great experiences for our guests. And we've got our own podcast coming out next month. We have a course coming out on hospitality, because after speaking to so many people in this industry and having a hospitality trained background myself, I felt there was a real disconnect here. Oh, I've got a property, I'm going to be a short-term rental operator, or I own XYZ properties, heads on beds. Let's talk about heads on beds. No. Let's come back and talk about hospitality, because, hospitality is what we do as short-term rental operators. So we've created a hospitality-driven course with 22 of the people who are in this community, who are across all over the world, and we're raising the standards of the industry. So we've created an industry standard in hospitality for the short-term rental world. We've got an academy. We've got a non-profit organization coming out, Hospitable Host Nonprofit, which I'll be sharing with everybody later on in the second half of the year what that's going to mean. But it's going to be a way that hosts will be able to give back to their own communities and to the world, really. So, because
I think that's awesome.
If we do it right, we have such a great life if we can do it right.
Right.
This is a really great industry to be in.
Yeah, I think that is amazing, right? It just shows you firsthand, for everyone listening, you're sitting there thinking, can I do this, right? That's the same question that Jodie asked herself. And she's still saying to herself, wow, I can't believe I could do this. But by being, she applied some of the skills from her former life in hospitality, right? She took those and brought it to the short-term rental industry and was able to create not just incredible experiences for guests, but really a way of thinking about creating experiences for guests that turned into a movement. And that's really what Hospitable Host is all about. So, Jodie, before I let you go,
yes,
I have one last really important question for you, right? And so at Futurestay, we like to help empower anyone to be more successful with short-term rentals. And we do that by giving our rentalpreneurs what we call 6-minute missions. These are essentially a way of habit building to help them build the right habits so they spend their time either daily or weekly, depending on the time commitment they have available, doing the right things that make them better as hosts and get closer to their goals of financial success with their short-term rental. You've been a rentalpreneur for some years. You've interviewed hundreds at this point in time of other rentalpreneurs. What is a 6-minute habit that you recommend rentalpreneurs do every day or every week, maybe even once a month, that will help them move closer to their goal of financial independence?
There's so many. Yeah, you have to nurture yourself in a way that you don't burn out. It's very easy to want to do everything all at once. You need to set some boundaries. So in the morning, I wake up, I do it's going to take me over the 6 minutes, but I do a 15-minute meditation. I love Joe Dispenza, if anyone's into meditation. And then I look at my team. I reach out to my team personally every single week, just check in with them, like how they are feeling, how's their family, how are they getting on? Because I think it's very easy just to expect that people are going to work really hard for you. But if you just give a little bit of yourself, your personal self. So when I'm here in the UK and they're cleaning, I'll go around and collect coffees from the cafe and dish them out and go and see everyone, just have a 5-minute chat. And that makes all the difference. So when I am away and we have a guest who can't get into the lockbox, who can't get their key out, I can ring them and say, could you just duck over? No problem, Jodie. And that's out of their scope. So I think nurture your people, nurture yourself. It's very, very important. You don't want to be burned out. In this last 2.5 years, I watch people. I'm a people watcher, and I see people all over social media and out there telling their story, telling what they do, educating and inspiring. And then all of a sudden they drop off the face of the earth. And it's like, where are they? And I'll reach out to them and say, hey, haven't seen you online for a while. Are you okay? Oh my God, you've noticed. Yeah, of course I've noticed. I watch. Are you okay? Well, I'm having marital issues. I'm doing this. Someone's sick, And I think it's very, very important, like nurture these relationships, not just for business, but for personal. Like if you're in this business for the right reasons, you're a people person and you like people. So nurture those relationships. That's what
that is such a valuable tip. I think what a lot of rentalpreneurs forget is that your staff, and I'm not talking about a big team with weekly meetings. I'm talking about, it could be your cousin or your friend in the neighborhood or the real estate agent that sold you the house that may be helping with, sending over, the right cleaner, making references to the handyman. It could be your cleaner themselves. It could be your spouse if you guys work together, right? You have someone else that you're relying on, and regardless of how frequently you're relying on them for your short-term rental, that's your team.
Exactly.
If you don't keep your team happy, if you don't keep them close and keep them connected, you're at real risk. And the reason why is your team is often the first line of defense when it comes to your guests, right? If they're doing the turnovers for you, the difference between a 3.5 star and a 5-star review can often be whether or not the cleaner says, oh, you know what? I think I forgot to take that second trash can out. You know what? Jodie did me a solid. She bought that coffee last week. I'm going to head back and take that second trash can out, right?
Yeah.
It's all because everyone gets to make those decisions every day about how much they want to give. And so when you give to your team, they'll give back to you. Genuinely. You have to genuinely give to them. They'll
Exactly. Yeah. And empower your team, let them make some decisions. It's not all about you. I couldn't care less how they put the cushions on the sofa or on the bed. If it looks nice and they walk out and they're proud of it, that's fine by me. We have this little routine. We've got a cleaning checklist. So they go in, they clean, they're to walk out the door, take 5 deep breaths and walk in like they're the guest. They walk around. Am I happy with this? Oh, I forgot to put that away. Or, oh, that soap needs to be filled up. Then they see it through completely different eyes. And then as they walk out, I'm a bit kind of weird, but we say, come on house, give these guests a nice experience, thanks very much. And, put a bit of a blessing, maybe some people might call it. I like to call it set the intention for the guest that's coming in, that they're going to have a great experience. The house is going to welcome them and we walk away. And
thank you so much for sharing that, Jodie, because I think that kind of, when we talk about habits and we talk about, the rituals, and I don't mean that in a necessarily even a spiritual way. I mean, just literally the things that you take time to do with intention in your life make all the difference between going through the motions and
Yeah,
having meaning, right?
exactly.
That cleaning with meaning, right?
I
Turning
like
over a
that. I
cleaning
like
with, you're gonna
that.
steal that. Cleaning with meaning, turning over a property with meaning is a
Yes.
tremendous difference, and you and your team will change the way you look at it, and it will change the way that your reviews are coming in, because you're going to turn it over differently for guests. That entire way of thinking, from treating your team with not just respect, but treating them like people,
Yeah.
right? To giving them a way, empowering them to really take control over decisions that to you may be meaningless, but to them make them feel like they're in charge, because they are in charge of those things. That's what real empowerment is.
That's it.
To giving them a ritual, right, which turns it into a habit for them to do a great job cleaning. Step outside, take 5 deep breaths, and look at it with fresh eyes. If it looks good to you, great. When you leave again, give it a little bit of a blessing. Give it a little bit of an intention before you walk away. That is such a great 6-minute tip. Now, it doesn't take 6 minutes to necessarily do that, but but those individual pieces each do take less than 6 minutes. That's a great compound habit that any
Yeah.
rentalpreneur should think about building into their business. Really, almost any entrepreneur should think about ways they can do that sort of thing. That's a great, great tip. Thank you for sharing that with everyone.
I just want to share one other thing, though, before we go. I want to let people know you don't always get it right. You don't always get it right. And that's okay, because you've met the expectations for some people, but not everybody. And you'll get a 5-star review for exactly the same thing that you presented to somebody else that may give you a 4 or a 3, and that's okay. I do. When I first started, those reviews used to mean everything to me. But now they still obviously have meaning, but I know I cannot please everybody. So I want to tell you one little story. I have a property in the country. The other day I got called by a guest, horrified because there was a mouse in there. Now, this isn't a normal rat in the city or a mouse from the city. These are teeny tiny little field mice. And it's freezing here in the UK at the moment. And they come in, they're trying to get warm. I'm not saying they can stay at my property, but this woman went berserk because we had a mouse in the house. Now, I went there. We couldn't find it. She checked out. She was horrified. I'm waiting for the review. It's probably going to be horrific because she told me she was going to write a horrific review. I was over there with my son. We cleaned it absolutely spotless. We couldn't find this thing. And then I went upstairs. I saw it. I sucked it up with the vacuum cleaner. It was stuck in the vacuum cleaner. I released it, but then there was another one running around and I couldn't get it. So we told the new guests that were coming in, I rang them, couldn't get hold of them. They turned up at the doors, we're still cleaning. And I told them, I said, look, I've got another property if this is a problem with you. Do you know what? No, it's not. It's just a little mouse. It doesn't matter. And I wanted to share that story because it's just two worlds apart. Same property with the mouse, with Mickey,
Mouse.
same mouse, but two very different guests. These guests who were coming in couldn't care less. They were so happy to be there at the property with this other lady. I don't think I would have pleased her with anything. She would have found something else. If it wasn't the mouse, she would have found something else. So the moral of that story is you cannot please everybody in hospitality. You just cannot. Don't take it personally. Just do your best. Set that intention up that you're going to give your guests the best experience that you can. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It wasn't something that you intended to happen.
And that's great advice for every rentalpreneur, right?
Yeah.
Jodie, thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with rentalpreneurs listening all over the world. So guys, I was definitely inspired by Jodie's story. I'm probably going to talk about this for a long time because I think this is such a this is I think it's like an archetypal story about how people become rentalpreneurs and how it can change not just their lives, but the lives of, in Jodie's case, literally, tens of thousands and going and counting, and beyond. So
So vote
You
for
know,
me.
so somewhere
Vote
near
for
wherever you're
me.
watching this, there will be a link, and you can click on that link,
Mhm.
and you can vote directly for Jodie if her story inspired you. And I think it certainly was an inspiring one. Jodie, there's so many ways that so many reasons people might want to follow up with you. But if they do want to follow up, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
We have a website, hospitablehost.com, where you can send me an email, or just follow our Instagram page. It's Hospitable Hosts, and we put everything on there. You'll see the journey of all the authors and everyone coming together, and all the conferences that we have people speaking at, and what we're doing. So I would love you to just jump on and follow us, and reach out. Tell me your story. Maybe you would like to share your story in the next book that's coming out, or on our podcast, or whatever it may be. But certainly reach out.
Awesome. So thank you so much. And if you
Thank
want to
you.
learn more about Futurestay and how Futurestay helps people and rentalpreneurs get closer to success in just 6 minutes at a time, you can go to futurestay.com. You can also find me and my podcast there. Thanks everyone for listening,
Thank you,
and good
Future
luck on
Stay.
your rentalpreneur journeys.
Thank you. Bye.